Hi, my name's Garrett. Welcome to my YouTube channel, and today we're going to talk about assassins in Trench Crusade. Do you know what Trench Crusade is? I'm sure if you're a miniatures wargamer, at this point you've heard of the game by Factory Fortress, Trench Crusade, a gritty wargame at the skirmish level designed to take you into the battlefields of a hellish reimagining of World Wars. If you want to learn more about it, just check them out, trenchcrusade.com. They're awesome, and they've got all their rules for free. Now, speaking of those rules, Trench Crusade recently launched their 1.0, aka their official print release of their rules. They've been in beta testing for a year or 2 years or so. I've been playing it for over a year now. I've been focusing primarily on the Assassins sub-faction under the Iron Sultanate banner. So when you think about the game, you've got different factions. I like the Iron Sultanates because they are cool. They have homunculi, they have alchemists, they have very awesome gold armor, and they are kind of crappy in the game. They struggle. Let me put it that way. They can struggle depending on your playgroup. So I also love narrative games, and the fact that some of the folks behind the game I love, Mordheim, also working on Trench Crusade now, and it's kind of their brainchild. I'm excited to see what they're doing for narrative stuff. So that's why I dove in a little while ago, and the assassins immediately caught my eye. I was so excited about the idea of time traveling assassins. Hopped up on all sorts of medications, shall we say, and they are off on a little time warp adventure to go slaughter specific targets. So that is the premise. And when in game design, I always talk about especially when you were talking about the skin of something, there is the premise, which is the skin and the idea of what are you telling the players they can do. So time traveling assassins, super hyper elite army, highly skilled warriors, you're running into heavily armed gunfire with nothing but a knife, and you are a badass. That is the premise. The payoff, it's been struggling. And the payoff is does the actual rules and setup of the game, does that actually work for what the premise was, right? So in this case, can I actually run my assassins nimbly, skillfully, out of the corners, out of the shadows, take out key targets, and then flee, right? And have that kind of hit and run tactic? Or can I blend in with their group and insurgency style take them down one by one? And the answer to both of those is no, not really. The current core rules don't really support that, which is a bummer because it's a very fun faction. It's also per model an incredibly expensive faction, with the exception of Azebs, our frontline troops, who are incredibly cheap, and you just give them a gun and stick them out in the end board and just say, do your thing, man. So let's talk a bit about some Fida'i special rules. The main thing that sets them as they are is that they can use very few models from the overall faction. They can use they can't use. It's more of a list of what they can't use than they can, right? And really what it comes down to is they can use 3 things off of the list. And one of them is reskinned. They can use assassins. Yay, they got assassins. That's one. They can use Azebs, which are the foot troops, the little line infantry, your basic folks. I always name mine Abbas. And then we have the Janissary that's reskinned as a dervish. And the dervish gets different rules, but a similar stat line as the Janissary. And the Janissary is that heavier, beefy bruiser of a troop. And then in this faction, they're turned more into a dual wielding style. The premise is they're a dual wielding style thing, but really what they usually become is a mid to long range sniper, and you stick them up in a building somewhere. So again, we're already seeing the limitations of the troops, the limitations and the premise of those troops is not actually going to match what they do in game. Then you have the art of assassination, which is that you can upgrade those 3 assassins. You can only take 3, by the way. You can upgrade them with special powers, basically. And these special powers cost extra ducats when you buy that unit, and you've got one that used to be really fun and is now kind of useless, which is Hallucinogen Disguise, which allows you to basically infiltrate, which, by the way, this faction is the infiltrate faction. It is the faction that wants to let everybody deploy, and then you put your models on the board. So you get to work with more information, and your opponent gets less information about where are you going to be, what are you going to do, right? So that's fun. That's exciting. Sort of. And it only works half the time because many of the missions of the game don't allow the infiltrator rule, which means the benefit and what your faction is built around kind of falls apart, because if you're randomly rolling encounters in narrative play, half the time, or a very frequent amount of the time, I should say, let me rephrase that. It is highly likely that your faction's really key thing that the points are built around, that makes it kind of special in its mechanical identity of being a infiltrator-based faction, is just not a thing. It doesn't exist. You don't get to use it. So that feels bad. And if it was like, hey, all factions except assassins don't get infiltrator, okay, cool. Or if it's like you got something else, if you're a infiltrator heavy faction, I think there might be another faction of the game that's, infiltrator heavy, but this one just kind of gets torched by that rule. So Hallucinogen Disguise basically allows you to ignore the things that stop infiltrating or restrict infiltration movement, and deployment. It allows you to ignore that. Then Mirage of Time is one of the ones that is more likely to be taken, which makes it a little bit harder for people to hit your model. It's -1 dice to the success roll for attacks that target the assassin. That's great. Really, you're wanting to, as on your assassins, you're wanting to make them as unlikely to be hit as possible, because they have this ability where whenever someone misses an attack on them, you get to move them. On your opponent's turn, you get to move them. It's one of the few models in the game that gets off-turn interaction in terms of its movement. And so that's a really neat thing, except for the fact that your opponent, it's a game where you're always trying to restack the odds in your favor when you attack. Your opponent will simply not be targeting your assassins if they know what they're doing with any attack whatsoever that allows you to access that ability. Instead, they will throw a grenade, and they will throw that grenade not on your model, but they'll throw it somewhere within the blast range of the grenade, so you get auto hit. It's great. So that turns off that part of an assassin as well. Thank you, Truck. Thank you. Cool. Then we've got Secret Paths. Secret Paths is almost mandatory, in my opinion, because it opens the work from home list, which is it's just a bunch of Azebs and one assassin who refuses to come onto the board, so you don't get to kill the warlord. You don't get that cool thing if you're their opponent facing them, but it's also a list that just kind of, it sucks. It's a fun list, but it's a list that doesn't work well, especially in a competitive environment, but it's fun to play, right? So it's why I recommend it. So Secret Paths is at the start of the game before deployment. You can, basically just pick one of your assassins that has this ability, and they don't deploy on round 1. They deploy on round 2 instead, or 3, right? They can deploy later in the game. It leads to some off, sideboard shenanigans. The problem is you don't pull your model off the board ever again. So you're starting at a deficit, hoping to get an advantage from that. It sometimes works. It usually, for me, is really important, because that way someone doesn't get to pot shot an assassin and take out a 185 to 200 point model on turn 1. It's less chance of losing more points, right? So it's good for that. Then we've got Thunderbolt of Element, which is it increases your assassin's movement characteristic by 2 inches, and it adds plus dice on your ability to dash. So it makes you more likely to be able to dash, and it makes you move a little bit further. This is great. It's just a boost. But that's it. That's the 3. That's it, right? So, it's a bit of a bummer. Then, on top of those abilities, now, that's it. That's all you get. This is for special stuff for assassins in the Assassins faction. The Acolytes, up to 3. It used to be all of them. Used to be all of them. In 1.0, it's up to 3 of your basic infantry can gain the Infiltrator keyword and join your assassins in the Infiltrator goodness for 10 ducats. It's not great. Like, sure, I can take it. It makes an AZEB, I think, 35 points because they think they're base 25. Like, I'm gonna do it, but this is basically the faction of taxes. Like, everything has a tax, but it's not good enough for the tax that you're paying. It's like you're just kind of paying for something that gets turned off half the time. And it's not, when the whole faction had Infiltrator, that was nice because now I really get the benefit of taking cheap troops. At that time, I had the benefit of taking cheap troops, and those cheap troops would allow me to like mess with my opponent. But now that only 3 of those cheap troops, right? Like it's less benefit in a faction that did not need that nerf. It did not need it at all. It got a nerf and it didn't need one again. So there's that. Okay, dervishes. A dervish, it's also a little weird the way that they write this. So someone who knows, please comment below because I am actually confused and my friends are confused and we're running a campaign about this. But the dervish is, you can have up to 4 of them. They use the Janissary warband entry, so that data sheet for our Warhammer friends. But they can't wear the reinforced armor that, so they can't go heavily armored. They don't get the -2 on their defense. And they replace the strong keyword with the ignore offhand weapon keyword, which is cool, sort of. Strong is nice. We like strong. Strong would have let them carry the heavy flamer and like the big swords and things like that. Instead, they get ignore offhand weapons. So really, they're trying to push this model to be more of a what's the word I'm looking for? More of a like melee blending thing. Like you give it a couple of swords, you put it out in the mid board, and it go burr, right? You deal a bunch of dice, and they don't want you to have that reduction in dice. They want you to feel like it's fun to use. The problem is, I don't want to stick something in the mid board. I don't want to have a melee dude that costs Janissary prices that can't wear reinforced armor. Like, if the best I can get is -1 dice on attack rolls coming at me, unless I have a blood marker on my opponent, that's not -2 if I'm in cover. But in melee, like, it's hard to get cover when you're in melee because it's melee. It doesn't feel good. It feels like a waste. So instead, I mean, when looking at what the community has really done too with the dervishes, is that you give them a sniper rifle because we have those now. And sure, you give them a couple of weapons and you give them light armor and you put them out at a point in the backfield where with light armor, it's -1 to hit, with cover, it's -1 to hit. And then hopefully at the weapon targeting you, it's long range. So another -1 to hit. So that makes -3 to hit. Okay, cool. Now those are odds we can work with. And that gives you a body to shoot a sniper rifle. That's really what the dervish is for now. If it gets jumped, like if someone else can get in melee with it, okay, cool. Now you have the 2 weapons you can fight with. That's great. But I mean, you could also just give it a shield. Like, you could do that. Although I don't think that works with sniper rifles anymore because of how equipment and offhand weapons and all that stuff works with ranged equipment now. I think if you've got the gun declared, you don't even get that. So there's a lot of interesting like shifts in 1.0, but that's what the dervish is good for now. Is it's a sniper, even though it's designed to be a melee assassin. And also, please just give it its own warband entry. Like, why are we having to use this modification for a sub-faction by, like, just give it its own entry, please, in the book. That'd be great. Or the rules. Just let it be its thing. It doesn't need to be a Janissary that has all these extra things. Just let it be its own thing. And you got another rule. It's Flock of Assassins, a Fida'i element warband. You can have 0 to 2 assassins and 1 master assassin. The master assassin is basically, it's the leader option. We'll talk about that in a second. But then you got the Killing Squad, which is a Fida'i element warband, can include one fire team, which they really don't need. They don't need it. I'm totally in agreement with Ryan that you don't need fire team for this faction. I don't personally know why it's still here after all these patches, but it seems like, okay, sure, the designers have decided they want this faction to be able to access fire teams. I'm not going to complain. At least we get something, right? Like, at least we get that. And I'm not going to complain about the fact we have it, but I am going to say it's not really part of the identity, and I'm okay with us not having it if they decide to take it away later, right? Like, that's fine. I would prefer other things for this faction than the fire team bonus. Some ways you could use fire team include having 2 assassins that are linked in a fire team. One of them lights up a target, puts a bunch of blood markers on it, and the other runs in and finishes it off, right? So that's a ranged and a melee assassin combo. You can also do a dervish that's a sniper that puts the hurt, some really hard punch in damage onto a target from long range, and then you have it paired with, again, guess what? An assassin that runs in and finishes it off. You could also do a couple of Azebs that are stuck together and they just kind of pot shot when you need it. But because you're running so few models in this list, fire team is actually at a detriment because it's an elite list. If this was a horde army, if we were playing something like Prussia, which is basically Skaven, if you're playing Prussia and you have a bunch of bodies with a bunch of grenades, fire team is great because you get to throw more grenades faster. In this faction, that's not really needed. And in fact, what you're trying to do is like survive through all of that grenade spam coming at you. So fire team's okay if you need to like move someone out of the way or position up a long range hit with a melee kill or the inverse. But it's not necessary or great, but we have it. Hey, we've got something. Yay. Okay. And then, so the last little bit of fun goodness you get is the Master Assassin. Now, the Master Assassin is fun because, hey, the premise is you are a cool assassin and you are doing cool assassin things on a battlefield. And guess what? That is the Master Assassin. They are a normal assassin with a price upgrade to 95. So it's a 10 point upgrade. But you get tough, which means the first time you're knocked out, you're just downed instead, if I remember right, if that's what the rule tough is now. Basically, you get an extra wound. Like, you get another hit point. You live again one more time. And that's it. It costs more. And it just has a second wound. It doesn't get anything else. Some members of the Assassins community were really, fingers crossed, hoping it would have immunity fear. It does not. Sorry, guys. You don't get that. And that's it. That's what you get when you're playing for like special rules. Now you do get some weapons and some, war gear, and that's nice. Or they call in this game battle kit. You get some battle kit. And the battle kit is it's fine. You get one piece of armor piercing AP battle kit, and that's the Bow of Alamut, which, by the way, let's work on the names. I want some cool names. Please. Like this is like, We'll talk more in a second, but like, cool names are great. Like, we've got all these awesome names for the hell factions and stuff like that. Like, more than just the Bow of Place We Live At, please. That would be great. So, Bow of Alamut, you only get one. I wish you could take 3. That would be wild. I actually have played some games where I've just, we've just done that. And it's fine. But it actually isn't horribly overbalanced. It just means that your assassins all have armor-piercing shots, which is great. It's what you need in order to survive. But, it's a wildly expensive weapon. So you're basically not taking anything but 3 assassins because it's a 50-point gun. Cool. Or a bow. 50 ducat bow. So this weapon... It's a 2-handed weapon, so that means you can't take other ones. It used to be a 60-inch range. I remember the blessed days of a 60-inch range. It went down to 48, I think, and now it's 40 inches. Why? Why, though? I asked this question because I don't know, and I would really like to know why the weapon that's supposed to shoot an arrow through time and space and hit anybody on the board can now only hit within 40 inches. And that means it can only hit within 20 inches without the -1 to hit penalty. For 50 points, Okay, let's talk about the special bits with it. It's got critical ignore armor, right? So critical, it does cool stuff when you roll double sixes, right, onto hit. That's cool. So if you crit, you get some cool stuff. It also has ignore armor, so it's an AP weapon. And then it has the temporal slipstream ability, which, hey, actually speaking of, so the word temporal is used a lot in Assassins stuff, but I actually like the use of it. It creates this consistent keywording. So when we're talking about fancy names and like flavor text for stuff, temporal's fine. I like temporal. It's interesting. It's a cool word. Temporal slipstream sounds like a magic card. In fact, it might be a magic card. I'm going to have to go check that on Gatherer later. But it says, if a ranged attack made with this weapon causes any blood markers to be placed on the target model, you can immediately redeploy the attacking model within 1 inch of the target model, regardless of the distance of any intervening obstacles. Cool. Note that if the attack takes the target out of action, no blood markers are placed, and this ability cannot be used. Okay, so I heard a lot of people saying this was a huge nerf. This weapon was absolutely broken, and it means that nothing works anymore, and we can't use it. Actually, the opposite. This actually, I see this as a little bit of a buff to where it was before, but buff in quotations. In terms of it makes things clearer of what you can do with it, and the way that charging works now in the game, this is much clearer. This is a weapon that because it isn't a charge, and they're using the term redeploy instead of the term as a fit in for the word teleport, basically. Colloquially, what we would call uppy downing. You pick your model up, you put your model down. This is a redeploy. And so because that's not a move, you've got the move or dash or retreat option, which is its own thing. Move or dash or retreat is a thing now. That's just one thing, right? You can still do that. If you kill the target, you could retreat. Great. Once you're in melee and you stabby it. And you can stabby it because if a ranged attack made with this weapon causes blood markers to be placed on the target model, you can immediately redeploy the attacking model to the target model regardless of the distance of intervening obstacles. Right. Know that the attack takes blood markers. Right. So this is not charging. Charging is what you can't use a ranged weapon with, right? So if you attack with a ranged weapon that does not have the assault keyword, you can't charge. Can't do it. This isn't charging. So you can use it, you can get into melee, and you can stabby in melee. And that's fine. That's fine. So actually, in the way that the base rules of this game work, this is a bit of a clarification. It's a bit of a buff, because now, not only is this not a charge, it also isn't some sort of movement shenanigans, which leaves your dash, retreat, or move available. That's great. Also, because it's not a charge, if it had assault, you'd still be able to charge later, but it doesn't. So because it's not an assault weapon, and because it doesn't count as a charge anymore, it still turns off your ability to charge if you use this weapon, but it's a little clearer in the base rules how that works. I hope that makes sense. But it's nice that it's critical, it ignores armor, and basically it's the double-edged weapon, because one, if you kill the target, you don't get to teleport, which sometimes there are instances in this game where it'd be really, really nice to be able to teleport after killing that target. Let me give you a really good one. If my assassin gets stuck in a kill zone, I would love to be able to use that arrow as a get out of jail card. If I have an assassin in the middle surrounded, my assassin is going to go down. That's 200 plus points probably, because it's a 50-point weapon. You've got the reinforced armor. You've got the 85 to 95 for the assassin. You've got probably a medikit, blah, blah, blah. All these other stuff you got on it, like helmet and gas mask and whatever. You got a 200-point model. That thing is expensive. You do not want it to go down. It is a linchpin in your army, and you only got 3 of them. I would really like to be able to use that bow to shoot something 20 to 40 inches away and extract myself from that danger zone. That would be really nice. Can't do it, though. The way that this game works, can't do it. Because if I kill that model way out there, I'm stuck. And it would be nice if it was guaranteed you had the option instead of it's the coin flip of, hey, am I going to kill this thing or not? And because it's armor penetrating, you're actually killing things more often than you're not. especially if you've already got blood markers stacked on them, which is usually when you're using the bow. Based on how the way the assassins function is, you're usually not using your assassins until you've tried to stack a couple of blood markers on the thing you want to kill. So while this is great at getting into an engagement, it's not so great at getting out of an engagement. And I would love if you could do both with this bow. But that's not a knock on the design. That's just I wish it was a different design. Then we've got the cool knife, the Golden Kandjar. The Golden Kandjar is a 20-point knife. It can only be used by assassins, which I think is kind of silly, but okay, cool. And then it's a one-handed weapon. It's melee, and it gets +1 injury mod. So +1 injury is great. You still got to hit with it though. So you got to be in melee. You got to hit with it, and then it's helpful. But you do get the special ability attack twice. You can make 2 melee attacks with this weapon, one after the other. But you do still have to deal with the offhand attack thing. If you try to run with 2 of them. So like if you want to roll 4 attacks, 2 of those attacks are going to be at -1 dice. But that said, if you want to just have one in one hand and a shield in the other, you got 2 attacks as if you had 2 knives and no shield. Something to think about. Okay. Then you've got the Hashashin Leaf. Hashashin Leaf is 5 points. It's consumable and you only get 4 of them. I don't like these. I'm fine with it being consumable. If it's going to be consumable and it's going to be attacks, why am I limited? Just let me make poor decisions. Let me do that. I'm already losing it every time I use it. Just let me make poor decisions. So this thing has the ability to enhance strength. It just, whoever you pop it on, for 5 points, you give them the strong keyword. So what we're saying is the cost in this faction for the strong keyword is 5 points. And you can only give it to 4 things. So it would be nice if I could give it to, I don't know, a dervish. And I mean, I can, and then I could give, if I could find a weapon that was like something really heavy, that'd be cool. Usually you're going to put this on Azebs. You're often going to put this on Azebs. Originally, back early on, you would put it on your assassins because of how reinforced armor worked. Reinforced armor was heavy. But now you put it on your Azebs so that they can carry heavy siege Jezzails. And the heavy siege Jezzails do a lot more damage, and they are stronger and they have a range, right? So they get to do that and they get to move and shoot instead of just being useless. So that's usually what you'll do. Or if you're able to be lucky enough to find a heavy flamethrower through the narrative experience, you could give an Azeb a heavy flamethrower. Cool. But yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I like the idea of a consumable. This is a great idea. I would love to see more of it, right? So I'd love to see different kinds, different types, different things like that. So that would be nice. And that's it. You do have access to the Assassin's Knife or Assassin's Dagger that sits in the vanilla rules for the faction, which basically is if you deal a blood marker on a melee attack, you get to move. The problem is, for that weapon, there's kind of a, oh my god, how does this work in the community of, do you get a free move on top of your normal ones, or is it just, you can, if you haven't yet, you can. One makes it useless, and the other makes it really good. Because more movement is good in a faction that doesn't want to get hit. So overall, you don't get many tools anymore. You never really got many tools, and it was kind of a like, do what you can with the limited tools in your kit, which is fun. And you are kind of playing mono blue for my Magic friends out there, of trying to like find a way to stop people from hitting you. But here's the thing. There's some problems. Your cool special stuff is all turned off by 15-point grenades. Or I guess there's 7 now. 7-point grenades can kill 200-point models very easily. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right at all. So the experience that happens is the way that Blast works now, it gets around all of the Assassin's toolkit to stop getting hit, which is great. That's good. We do need counters for these assassins. I'm not saying you should be impervious and invincible, but the fact that someone can just hit you from around a corner because of a blast target range, that sucks. That really sucks. I've experienced it. I've played several games of 1.0 now. Don't like it at all. It's not. I would not recommend anyone play Assassins if, one, their feeling of fun is winning. Ever. Do not play this faction if you want to win. Two, don't play this faction if you want to have any sort of semblance of normalcy between you and your opponent. This is very much, I recommend this faction if you like the flavor of what the faction is rather than of what the faction promises. The faction promises really cool assassins doing really cool assassin things. The faction gives you a group of incredibly high foot soldiers with 3 people who kind of sort of work better than them and are very heavily kitted out that kind of run into the midboard and die. It's not like you can try and be cagey, but it's hard to be cagey. And the reason why is because there's not a ton of redeployment options. Your redeployment option for the assassins is only for one assassin with the hallucinogen disguise. With the secret paths. And then your hallucinogen disguise is basically not really a thing you want to take anymore because it's just too many points and it's not really useful because of how Infiltrator works. And then the thing that people are going to attack your faction with is flamethrowers, anything with fear, because, hey, guess what? Your entire faction has no immunity to fear. So trench ghosts just beat you because they have flamethrowers and fear. The Hell factions beat you because a lot of their stuff has fear and they have flamethrowers. New Antioch beats you because they have grenades and they're 7 points. And they also have flamethrowers. Yeah. And then Grail beats you because it's Grail. So you're kind of at the end, the bottom of this pack. And it sucks. It doesn't feel engaging, especially when you have to do a lot of thinking and planning and you're trying to do something on the board. And then your opponent can go, well, that's cute. I'm going to throw a 7-point blast marker at you and take you off the board because I can. And if that doesn't work, and I'm going to do it with another one because I have Fire Team and I'm Prussians. So it's in a state where I would call this subfaction borderline unplayable. If you're competitive, I highly recommend you don't play this faction in a competitive setting. Right now, I highly recommend that you play it at home and you have a fantastic time, but don't do it in a competitive setting. 900 points and 8 ducats, it's not. 900 ducats and 8 glory, it's not your thing. Because let's talk about glory items. You get RPGs, dogs. Yes, you get your script garden. Yes, you get your Mamluk, which are just mercenaries. But really, you're like rolling on tables, desperately trying to get something to make your assassins survive. Because yeah, if you get the right rolls on the melee and the stealth tables, like the movement shenanigans tables, you can have some assassins that are borderline untouchable. But that's the same for any faction rolling on those tables. That's not something part of the faction specific. That's luck. Are you lucky? And in my case, I'm not. I'm usually rolling really bad on those tables because I want to roll and I want to see what happens. This is not a complaint. This is this is how it works out, right? In my case, a lot of my assassins, they lose an eye or they lose an arm. And so all the cool stuff like ranged weapons, goodbye. Hey, you could give them a flamethrower. That's great if they lose an eye. Cool. But, then they're going to get shell shocked. They're going to get fear, all that stuff. I think the big thing is that what we're looking at, it's an army with minimal AP. It's an elite army, so it's easy to tear apart. It's not a heavily armored army. There's not much that gets -3 outside of the 3 assassins because you park them in cover, right? But once they're out in action, if they're not carrying a shield with reinforced armor, they're going to be -2 tops. Yeah. And then once they're in cover, you can get them back to -3. But it's hard to the thing is that like your opponent's going to get +3 or +4. Or if they're a sniper priest of New Antioch, they're going to get +7 somehow. I don't know how they do it, but they do. And maybe it's +5. Anyway, the point is so much gets canceled out. So you're regularly getting hit because it's on 2d6, it's heads up, 7 up. You're more likely to get hit than not. And then most times people won't even roll to hit. They'll just hit you with grenades or flamethrowers. So there's that. And then the things that you're trying to kill the big problems in your enemy factions usually have fear, which is something you do not have an answer for. And so if you have a faction that is based on melee and skirmishing, and you go into a faction that has fear, you're screwed. So you're just in for a bad time. So yeah, that's where assassins are. It's not great. Go play Prussians.